stay at home and you build saddles and make silver, or you paint, or sculpt, and we'll do all the selling. Well, that's not the world anymore. Now you got to be now you got to be out there promoting yourself, and it's uncomfortable. I mean, it's really uncomfortable, and I think one of the most uncomfortable things about it is you see so many incapable people that just master um, the ability to promote themselves, and it seems the less humble you are, the more you can promote yourself, right? And in my mind, it's really hard to be a great artist or a great craftsman if you aren't humble, because being humble is part of what makes you look inward. You know, how do I get better? How do I move ahead? And man, that's hard to be like that when you're thinking you're the greatest. And you keep telling people you're the greatest, it sinks into your mind, right? And that's a dangerous road.
Well, I forget who it was that said that the best, the most successful artists work like accountants, and that's the same thing as what you
Yep.
just said. You show up for work. You have a systematic way that you approach your work, and you dig into the great artists of the world, either today or way back hundreds of years ago. Like you said, they're often had some sort of patron situation where they were supported. They didn't have to worry, but they still had to get up and get her done. They There was no,
Yeah.
oh, I'll do this when I feel like it. There was none of that. They approached it like an accountant, like this was my vocation, this was my work, this is what I do when I
Yeah.
get up, this is
Yeah.
who I am, all of that kind of stuff. So, but it's true that nowadays, holy cow, we have so many hats to wear. It's just amazing. And we're in an age where we're we've been kind of young enough that we have to count on some of this technology and promotion and stuff. But we're old enough, it's damn hard. It's just really, really hard.
It is.
I would
Well,
rather not have to do it.
it's pretty obvious yesterday, right? It's hard.
Oh man, yeah, we tried to record this thing
Yeah.
and ran into a wall. So
I ran into a wall. But too,
we got her
I
up.
mean, it's hard. It's hard for these younger people, because I feel bad for them, because you and I, when we started, like, man, I never thought I was ahead of myself because I always got told where I was. You know what I mean? Because I relied on guys like Pachetti and Drain and Chuck, you know, to keep me in line. And man, they kept you in line. You know, they'd see a piece of your work, and you know they'd damn well tell you what they thought was wrong with it. And I always knew, and it didn't always you know, come through as um, soft and fluffy. It was damn harsh criticism, but I always knew it was for the right reason. You know, and
Well,
they'd tell you some of the good stuff, but like, yeah, go ahead.
well, you grew up knowing how to struggle. I grew up in a stable situation, but I sure had to learn. I knew how to struggle. I was, I had to. Everything was a struggle. And nowadays people don't like to have to struggle. I mean, I that's just the way life
No.
is. That's this that when you you embrace the suck, you embrace the struggle. It's the way life is. You just
Yeah.
find a way to work through it. So for
Well,
for me, for art, for my craftsmanship, my mechanics, everything, horsemanship, relationships. I don't think any of it's been easy. Not one thing has been easy. It's all been a struggle. But I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. It's the way it has always been. And I know that's the way it's been for you too.
Yeah, and it takes a certain maturity to understand that, and that feeling sorry for yourself or why me or waiting for somebody to save you. It takes a long time to figure out nobody's coming. You know what I mean? And and then if you embrace it, I had guys over the years tell me, older guys, of course, older guys, enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey, and you'd think, what the hell are you talking about? I just want to get there. And then one day you wake up and you realize you ain't never getting there, buddy. You know what I mean? This is the deal. The journey is the deal,
Yep. Yep.
and once you
Yep.
can embrace that and just be, and it's really hard for me because I'm one of those guys that beats myself up because I always need to be better, you know? And everything I look at as not like, oh man, that's cool. It's how can I improve that, you know? And that's a balance too that you have to follow in your mind because you can beat yourself up to the point where you start going backwards. Um, it took a long time for me to figure out do the best job you can do in every situation and try and move it ahead. Understand where you're going wrong, and I don't give a rat's patoot if you're the greatest artist in the world. There's something you can improve.
Oh yeah. Well, it's you used the word, I think, freedom, or you're set free to do this or that, create, and that's part of that journey is to let go of stuff that you've done. Yeah, you're free to improve. You're not obligated to improve. You're free to improve, and I think that's what you're talking about. You're trying to, you're 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 okay with that journey and not beating yourself about the neck and shoulders because you did something wrong.
So, and I think people misunderstand that word freedom. You know, they look at freedom as I can do anything you want. Um, Freedom is the first step in freedom is self reliance. And if you don't take care of yourself and those around you, you're not truly free. So you can't have it both ways. You can't want the government or somebody to take care of you and want freedom too. That's just not the way the world works.
Got to bring your own
So now that
juice.
we've you got to bring your own juice. So now that we've conquered the world, let's conquer this saddle, man. Let's.
Yeah,
What do you got in mind?
yeah. Well, 24 years we've been kind of grinding away at it. 20, 24th collaboration. Hard to believe it's been that long, but no, I
Wow.
got I've had a tree in in the house here that it's a Wade. It's pretty fair sized horn on it, 4.5 inch high candle, so maybe just a touch bigger in both of those categories. But the tree really is the kind of tree that in fact, other than the horn might be a little bit bigger, it's the kind of saddle tree that I would have, that I would use. And it's pretty close to the one that I already use on when I go riding. So having said that, I guess I'd like to make a saddle that I would use really special for the show, uh, but not so decorated that I just stood back and threw a whole bunch of flowers on it, and
Yeah.
some kind of design that was. It's really hard to make a design that's simple, and maybe there's some bear leather in there, but a superior design that is a little simpler, but of a superior design artistically that is just really compelling. And I've got some ideas. I'm playing
So
around with some stuff. Your thoughts?
so I always think of a, and a full carved saddle is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But I always think of when you walk into a room and there's a full carved saddle sitting there. Um, Really, it looks like a plain saddle. If if you're 15 feet away from it and you're looking at it, and don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing the decoration. I'm just saying when it's a full carve like that, unless there's some really bold elements to that carving, it just looks like plain leather. So when you say you want you want to do it some way where it's broken up like that, so to me that for your eye is more appealing. It's more eye catching. In other words, to a full carved saddle, and it's also harder to achieve, right?
Uh,
Because that's where balance and art come into play, right? How do you balance this? How do you make it? And I think, like for me, I'm always trying to think, and it's hard for a silversmith because things are so small, but I want people to be able to look at something like across the room, and it catches their attention, right? Um, so how do you design something that does that? You 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 see that a lot in gun engraving where they can get that done because they're going up a barrel and they're not carving all around the barrel. They're carving a strip or
mhm.
a whatever on the barrel, and it's beautiful. Or I think of a bolt action, you know, and the knob on the bolt. I just sent one to Wilson, a picture of one full carved. The knob on the bolt is full carved, but then when you come down, that's plain, and it gives your eye a place to rest. Right. That's the,
Mhm.
so when I think of what you're doing, your your conception, there's I've seen it in a few ways, and I'm sure you have too, where guys do they'll do the swells and they'll do the cannel and maybe a border carve or gullet or whatever. Um, I think if that's done right, that can be.
Well, that's that's kind of where I'm at. The negative space becomes more important. What is not decorated becomes really, really important. So what you do or don't do with
Yeah,
that is a make or a break it deal, I think. So
yeah,
so you with a full carb saddle, you don't have to. You're not manipulating negative space to work for you. Your negative space is cut up into little bite-sized pieces, and like you say, it kind of gets lost in the
yeah,
woods. So,
yeah.
so that's in a kind of broad terms. That's what I kind of have envisioned. What I'd like to accomplish with this saddle. So, um,
So kind of my job in this deal is to listen to you. Hard to do when I keep cutting you off, but listen to you, listen to you, and then design my silver with that in mind. Um,
well,
so
what I'll start out with here, hopefully in the next got a pretty long weekend coming up with Mother's Day. Going to be out of town and stuff, but I might trace off a fender and start working with what I can do on a fender, and then
yeah,
and just come up with several different concepts and run those past you, and then see what you can do. Uh, um, what we talked, I think, about earlier was something bright cut engraved, but who knows? Maybe you could work with some of your silver and wind up with some bare silver. We haven't done a
well,
whole lot of that.
and so the first thing that keeps coming to my mind, when you're talking about this, and when we talked about it the other day, is is I love those extended scrolls, and I love when you bring a leaf up through that scroll, and the bare metal. You're right, and maybe we could think of this a different way, Kerry. If so, you want to incorporate bare metal into the silver too, and if we're just talking about borders, there's no reason a guy couldn't do a nice raised border on every on everything on it, be it a concho, a horn cap, whatever. And that's all there is that raised border, extended scrolls, extended leaf coming through, overlapping, coming around, and the rest bare metal. I mean, that's to me, that's very exciting, and you know, done right. I don't want to overstep. I don't want to, it's your concept, um, but
Well, uh,
that's pretty exciting.
I think I think if I were to where we're at right now with this concept, just right at the in real time, right in the moment, right here, is I could phrase it perhaps that let's not be afraid of that negative space, either one of
Mm-hmm.
us. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Negative space can be a really good friend if it's done properly, and so let's open the
Well,
playbook and see what we can get done. It might wind up being very little negative space in my decoration. I don't know. The thing is, where I'm at in my career, when I pick up a pencil, sometimes I have a concept in my head, and I kind of have a rough idea in my head, and it's based on some of the things. The illustration you sent me, an illustration of a, or as a picture of some little vignette of something. I think uh, maybe it was some stem structure, leaf structure coming out of a board or something like that.
yep.
Anyway, it kind of triggered a little bit of an idea, and truth be told, the saddle I'm working on right now is maybe a little bit of a spin off of that. So, so I'll use this saddle I'm working on right now for a customer as kind of a bit of a playing ground, if you will, experiment with this concept, see what ideas may come out of this, and use that as a platform to jump into this TCA project. But I guess what I was also going to say was when I pick up a pencil, sometimes I really don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I'm just going to, let's just see what happens here. And that's where that freedom comes into play, where you just, this could work out or it may not. I don't know. But I'm okay either way. And when you set yourself free to do that, some pretty cool stuff can happen. And and using the line, I'm really studying the line, the architecture of the saddle, the area to be filled, and what kind of lines, what kind of movement, what kind of shapes, interesting shapes are there with that. And those are serving me very well here lately because I'm taking clues from those shapes, and that's informing me on what kind of decoration might look good in this area.
Well, and two, when I start on something, and just like you described the saddle to me, a way something you would ride, right, with a big horn. So the first thing that comes to my mind is masculine, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a dainty saddle. It's masculine. So the decoration has to,
Yeah.
you can't use dainty decorations on a masculine piece. You gotta, it's gotta have some presence. It's gotta have some, you know what I mean? It's
Yep.
gotta move
Mm-hmm.
ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gotta be bold, um, to fit the piece. And especially if you're leaving a lot of bare negative space, then the decoration you do use needs to be like wake you up when you look at it. It needs to be
Spot
bold.
on.
So that's
Yep.
the
Mm-hmm.
the, the first concept that that comes into my mind. Masculine, bold,
Mm-hmm.
or it doesn't fit. You know,
Yep.
and that's the architecture of the saddle, right? It's bold, so it has to be. And I would look at something totally different if it's like the saddle you made for Leslie. This nice
Mm-hmm.
square skirts, but it's a 3B. It's definitely feminine, and the decoration's feminine. So whatever you do to that has to be feminine. So that's the first step, and it kind of gets me excited when you tell me about that. Um, like in my mind,
No,
I've got the silver designed, but
this this is really helpful for this is really helpful for me because I think what you just said is very, very informative. What kind of vibe, what kind of projection, and and
exactly,
cowboy. I mean, in a word,
absolutely,
cowboy, but done to the degree that is special. It's not like any just ordinary cowboy saddle. And when you were talking there, one thing
well,
you talked about, bold elements, perhaps larger leaves, flowers, and stuff. I could see really mixing it up with big bold elements and then just a spritz, a smattering of smaller stuff, just to make it interesting, just to make
yeah.
it interesting. I can see mixing things up that way, and that's when I suppose you could say a bit of my criticism. Sometimes we and I've done this. Everybody that's kind of extending themselves into the flower stamping world, you see the flowers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, they're all small, and then you wind up with this pattern that you have to have your nose in there to be able to appreciate it. But if you get bolder and mix it up with bold elements and smaller elements, then you got more dynamism, more drama, more it's more compelling. There's more variety. You can throw more variety in there. Makes sense?
So if you're, yeah, absolutely makes sense, and it made me think of a saddle Chuck did years ago, uh, um, for a TCA show. If you remember, it was kind of the Mexican look with the great big um, leather. It was bigger than a Mother Hubbard. It really went down. And if you remember
Mm-hmm.
back, he had scrolls, big scrolls going down each side. Period. That was it. Other than a line border. And when you walked in that room, that's the first thing that your eye was drawn to,
Mm-hmm.
was a big scroll, and you could see him. And like you say, when you do tiny stuff, it can be really, it's difficult. But doing big bold stuff is really difficult, because you can,
Mm-hmm.
every mistake is magnified, right? You take something this big and shrink it down to here, there's no mistakes. You take it and pull it back out to here, and oh, big mistakes, right? So if you can create a design that's bold and well executed, that can capture an eye when they walk in that room, any room, I shouldn't say that room, but we're talking about the gallery, right? And you're kind of, you're setting yourself apart, right? Instantly you're setting yourself apart. What's an eye see? Form, you know they see an outline, they see, that's what you're attracted to. It's like a bit that you see that's, engraved tiny tiny, and it's beautiful. If you hold it in your hand and you look at it, it's beautiful. But if it's on a horse in an arena, and or a branding pen, and they're across the other side of the pen, it's just a bit, just like we talked about a full carved saddle. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can capture the if you can capture everything you want there, which is masculine, cowboy, um, which is the same but different. Um, you know, it's there's words I won't use because we're being recorded, but um, it's just something that grabs you when you look at it. you can see it, you can feel it, and that's another thing, like you just said there. You said something really important. You get a vibe off something, right? You and that's so much what people are attracted to, and it's something that connects to them, to the space they're in right then, right? So uh, that a saddle like that will appeal to a man, probably not a woman, right? Of course, I shouldn't say that in today's world, but anyway, it, that's a
Well,
fact. And so you're designing it for that. So that's when you can throw the shackles off and just design, right? You've already made up in your mind. It's going to be masculine. It's going to be cowboy. So then that gives you that certain sense of we're back to freedom to move ahead from that point. You clear up a lot of confusion.
well, I think let's leave this conversation where we're at right here. I think
Okay.
we've kind of identified some broad, kind of large picture kind of concepts and stuff. And like I say, I think the next thing for me to do is to get some paper out and start getting some concepts down, and I'll text you a picture or two and stuff, and we can circle back in a week or so and see where we're at on things. So
Yeah,
the
that's
other thing
exciting.
too is I've borrowed my coffee about as long as I'm able to.
Okay, gotcha.
It's a self-limiting kind
All
of
right,
thing.
it is. It's
So
like drinking beer, right? Yeah.
all right, we'll
All right,
visit again
partner.
in a week or so. Hang
You
hang
got her.
on for we got to get this uploaded. Hang on a second.